So ladies and gentlemen, this is the outline of my presentation. There are two themes that I would like to focus my attention upon. One is against the background of the theme of this conference, which is communal harmony. The first part of my presentation looks at religion from a contemporary perspective. And the focus of this part of my presentation is what we have done to religion in the course of time. That's one part of my presentation. The second part brings in peace building and how important it is for us to engage with a relatively new term in our dictionary called peace building, and how, if we are able to realize what peace building is actually trying to get us to do, how we can approach not just the question of communal harmony, but how we can bring people together, we can bring hearts together, we can bring minds together. And there is in this hyphenated term called peace building a lot of potential, and I'm trying to place before you a thesis that many of the problems that we create for ourselves in the context of religion and otherwise could perhaps be addressed if we're able to reflect upon this one little loaded term called peace building. So with that little introduction, let me get down to the first part of my presentation, and I've titled this The Contemporary Reality Regarding Religion. To make it simpler, I will break this up into bullet points. According to me, or if you were to ask me, what have we done to religion? What has man done to religion? I would say there are 5 plus 1, 6 important things that we have done to religion in the course of time. I'm not blaming anybody here. Probably some of us are also equally responsible for this. But what is it that we've done to religion? Let me briefly highlight the 6 points very quickly before you. Number 1, deepening of religious animosities. This is one thing that we've done to religion ourselves. Number 2, exploitation of religion for political purposes. And perhaps politicians can partly be blamed, with the exception of the gentleman who was here with us this morning. But we also know what politicians can do to religion. I'm again not bringing in names or even political parties here. But it's very obvious that in the course of time, we have seemed to have excelled ourselves in this art of exploiting religion for political purposes. What have we done to religion? Point number 3. We have spread communalism. We have spread religious fundamentalism. Again, there's no time for explanations. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Number 4, we are engaging in a cultural stereotyping of the other religion, a stereotyping of the other religion based on myths, based on misperceptions, based on fallacies. We seem to be doing an excellent job about this. Number 5, we are maintaining entrenched positions within respective religions. Entrenched ka matlab, no spirit of give and take, no tolerance of the other, no compromise. This is the 5th thing that we've done to ourselves. And last but not the least, there are the challenges that are being posed in probably the 21st century by concepts like modernization, secularization, post-industrialization of societies to the traditional religious order. See how many religions, the traditional order religions, become so uncomfortable with what is happening in the 21st century. And this is a point that I don't have time to elaborate, but I suppose those of you who are aware of what I'm talking about will know. So 5 plus 1, if the 6th point is difficult, we can probably discuss this later on. But these 5 points, I'm sure all of you would agree with me, that we have done, we have excelled ourselves in doing this to religion, and we have only ourselves to blame. Against this background, let me briefly place before you this concept of peace building and how important it is for us to understand what peace building is talking about before we try to connect peace building with communal harmony. I'm not sure, since political science department has organized this, I'm sure peace building is very much part of the curriculum of political science. Those of you from the department would probably understand this better than the others, but let me quickly highlight 3 or 4 important points regarding this concept of peace building. 1992 is an important year. in the emergence of the concept of peace building, because it was in 1992 that we had a gentleman, I hope you remember his name, Boutros Ghali. You remember him? Students? Okay, we had a thinking United Nations Secretary General who came up with two important documents. I'm referring to one of the documents here called an Agenda for Peace. He came up with another important document called an Agenda for Development. And we had in the South series of seminars around what the Secretary General was wanting us to do. Now in this document of 1992 called an Agenda for Peace, we have Mr. Boutros Ghali placing before us a concept called peace building. Since then, peace building has come a relatively long way. Today it is a rich concept. It involves 4 sequential processes. And let me read out these 4 processes for you. Peace building begins with number 1, conflict prevention. There are ways and means whereby conflicts can be prevented. Peace building process number 2 speaks of conflict resolution. Where conflicts have already begun, well, you have to resolve them. So second process, conflict resolution. Third is post-conflict resolution. Based upon the idea that people are fighting, you separate them, you've brought peace into a conflictual situation, but if you leave them as it is, perhaps it can recur into something else because you not address the root causes of conflict. And therefore the third process in peace building speaks of post-conflict resolution. And then we have process number 4, which speaks of both institutional and civil capacity building for good governance and democratic development. So this is how rich the concept of peace building, just one hyphenated word called peace building, and see how many avenues it opens up for providing a healing touch in troubled society. Let me repeat these 4 processes once again. There is conflict prevention, there is conflict resolution, there is post-conflict resolution, and then there is institutional civil capacity building for good governance, etc., etc. Let me now briefly place before you the assumptions on which contemporary peace building is based. And these are important because I'm linking this up to Gandhi and to what we need to do in the present context. Now there are 4 major assumptions that the concept of peace building is placing before us. Assumption number, very practical assumptions. Assumption number 1, that conflicts exist in all societies and rarely erupt into violence suddenly or without warning. This is assumption number 1. Then let's be very clear that there are societies, many societies, perhaps most societies, where conflict is simmering beneath the surface. So let's understand the fact that that conflict exists everywhere, and that rarely does conflict erupt into something more serious without warning. So warning signals, the warning bells are constantly there. Are we listening to those warning bells? That's assumption number 1. Assumption number 2, there are complex, there are unique, and there are highly combustible combinations. Unique, complex, highly combustible combinations of ethnic/religious differences, plus economic hardship, plus bad governance. You put them all together and you have before you explosive situation. One of them could be ethnic religious differences. You add economic hardship to that, you add bad governance, you add politicization of religion to that, and you have a recipe for explosion. Number 3, the long-term precursors involve ill-considered government policies, inequitable development, social exclusion or marginalization, deteriorating economic conditions, and overall systemic decay. Now all of this also adds to the problem, and this is the third assumption on which peace building is based. And fourth and last assumption, conflict has a differential impact on men and women. I was very happy in the morning when a few women were brought up to the stage and felicitated as part of the inaugural program. Let's accept the fact that conflict, and I'm continuing this, conflict affects men and women differently. And as a corollary to that if we are to take peace building seriously, then we need to include women in this peace building process. Because they have been hurt more from conflicted situations, we have in women the inherent capacity to bring more meaning into peace building processes than guys like us. So these are the 4 assumptions behind the peace building. Having said that, let me now read out a quotation regarding peace building given to us by a remarkable lady, Susan Brown. Let me read this out, and I want you to listen to this very carefully. The best peace building is conflict prevention. That's how she begins. The best peace building is conflict prevention, and the best conflict prevention is sustainable development which addresses the root causes of conflict. I think there's a lot of wisdom in the sentence. If you don't mind, I'll read it out once again. The best peace building is conflict prevention, and the best conflict prevention is sustainable development, because in sustainable development, you are able to address the root causes of conflict. Now, using this as the hypothesis, I now come to the second part of my presentation. I hope I have some time. The second part presentation, and this is where I'm quickly going to place before you, number 1, policy perspectives for addressing the root causes of conflict. And this is where I'm saying governments have a lot of things to do. सरकार के ऊपर छोड़ के सरकार ये काम करना वो काम करना बहुत आसान है, and therefore the first part I'm saying this is what government should do. So let's not forget that governance begins from government. But for those of you who want to take me on by saying that सब कुछ सरकार तो नहीं कर सकता है, then I'm saying civil society, that is you and me, also have an important role to play, and have a list of things that we can do in this context, and then I come to my concluding observations. I think this should not take more than a few minutes. So what are the policy initiatives? Keeping Susan Brown's quotation statement in the background, what are the policy perspectives that the governments across the world need to do in order to address the root causes of conflict? Number one, a development-based approach to governance. The problem with governance is there's too little development as Gandhi would want us to understand. Not development from the perspective of only the middle class or the rich class or the well-to-do, but development that takes into account everybody. So if we want development-based approach to governance, then that development must be comprehensive. That development must be inclusive. It cannot leave out anybody, any section, however small the minority. That development must be sustainable. That development must be humane. And that development must be indigenously developed. We should be able to come up with what kind of development this country requires, this society requires, vagara, vagara. That's the first point. Second point, policy initiative, we need a governance approach. And this is where perhaps the concept of good governance becomes important. And a lot of agencies are trying to tell us what good governance is. Third is called the social integration approach to doing peace building. And this is where we can involve more and more people in the process of governance. And last but not the least, we need the gender mainstreaming approach to peace building and to governance, where, as I said, let me quickly read out a couple of points here. Efforts to resolve conflicts and address the root causes will not succeed unless we empower all those who have suffered from them, including and especially women. That's one point. Second point, only if women play a full and equal part can we build the foundations for enduring peace. And this is something that I believe in very seriously. So this is one part where I'm saying that if we believe in policy initiatives for good governance, policy initiatives for peace building, then we have to take, if government has to do a lot of these things, then these 5 points which I said here become very important. But then, as I said earlier, it's not all right for us to say this is only what government should do. Sarkar ye kaam karna chahiye. Sirf sarkar ye kaam nahi kar sakta hai. So this is where I'm saying stakeholders also have an important role to play. So here I place before you 6 stakeholders' commitments for ensuring better communal harmony, for ensuring more inclusive development, etc., etc. What are these 6 stakeholder commitments that I am placing before you this afternoon? First one is a commitment to a better understanding of religion. And this is where I would like to quote or place before you a few of my favorite quotations of Gandhiji's. to understand religion better, I think some of these quotes of Gandhi would help us. These are my favorite quotes. Religion is the tie that binds one to one's creator. Some of you have heard this already. Another quotation of Gandhi's: belief in one God is the cornerstone of all religions. Listen to this third one. All the great religions of the world inculcate equality and brotherhood of mankind and the virtue of toleration. This quotation is perhaps the most popular. All of you would have heard this. Religion is one tree with many branches. As branches, you may say religions are many, but as a tree, religion is one. Right? So in my 6 stakeholders commitments, commitment number 1 that all of us must take seriously is this commitment to a better understanding of religion, because I think over a period of time, as I pointed out in the earlier, we seem to have lost what religion originally meant, and we seem to be using religion for our selfish purposes. Second commitment from civil society stakeholders, a commitment to religious pluralism. And here again, leaders like Gandhi, I think, play a very important role here. I'm stating here that there is a need today for fostering both intra-faith communication and inter-faith communication about religious pluralism. That's the second commitment. The third commitment is a commitment to spirituality. Can we raise religion to a spiritual plane? This may not be easy. Last evening we were discussing it over the dining table. How competent are we? How effective would we be when trying to convince people, "Arey bhai, this is religion, this is spirituality, and there's a certain evolution that needs to happen," and how many of us are willing to evolve to raise religion and bring it to a spiritual level? The fourth commitment is a commitment to secular education, and that's very important today in the context of, if I may use the term here, saffronization. There is a need for monitoring of the teaching that is taking place within our respective traditions. There is a need for monitoring textbooks, need for monitoring curriculum material in schools, so that all of this reflects fairly and accurately religious doctrines and secular ideologies. There's also a need for monitoring the media, electronic and print, to keep them accountable for reporting, especially when media is engaging in what is called cultural stereotyping of certain religions. I think we've got to tell the media, listen, you can't do this. That's commitment number 4. Commitment number 5, a commitment to healing memories of past events. I think Maxim Dias has a paper on this. Truth and Reconciliation Commission, South Africa, has told us that there is a lot of virtue in, may not be forgetting the past, but in forgiveness. Can we rise to that particular level? Gandhi kept emphasizing this, that we recognize past injustices, but we are also willing to forgive, we are willing to engage in reconciliation, and we're able to provide what is called the healing touch. And this, I think, is the 5th commitment I expect from all of us, civil society, a commitment to healing memories of past events, and last but not the least, a commitment to a new human vision. What this conference is teaching us is that when we all come together from respective faiths, listen to each other and so on, perhaps we are chiseling out, maybe it may take a long period of time, but nonetheless, we are in the process of creating a grand new human vision of peaceful coexistence, of communal harmony, of unity in diversity. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for a very patient listening.